News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager. More details are emerging from President Trump's Beijing summit with China's Xi Jinping as the president makes his way back to Washington aboard Air Force One. The first reports are coming out from China's official Xinhua news agency. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall has more from Beijing.
Chinese state media seeming to confirm that Chinese President Xi Jinping will travel to the U.S. in autumn and the fall. That tracks with what President Trump had announced earlier this week, that he had invited Xi for a state visit on September 24th, which does align with the UN General Assembly that happens in the U.S.
Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall says Xinhua is also reporting the U.S. and China have agreed to set up trade and investment councils, though the details are still being negotiated. President Trump says he did not bring up tariffs with President Xi, but U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told Bloomberg News they did discuss creating a board of trade that would see tariffs reduced on at least $30 billion in non-critical goods. President Trump also says he made no commitments to the Chinese president when it comes to Taiwan.
President Xi and I talked a lot about Taiwan. He thinks they cannot have anything to do with what they're doing. I mean, he's against very much what they're doing.
The president spoke to reporters on Air Force One in a pre-recorded interview with Fox News. The president said U.S. policy on Taiwan has not changed, but he does not want to see the island, in his words, go independent. Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Horton reports the president still hasn't made a decision on a $14 billion arms sale to Taiwan.
He's trying to be sensitive without giving too much away in terms of this question, but potentially when he comes home, he's going to face Republicans and Democrats that want him to have a more forthright answer regarding Taiwan, or at minimum make sure that in the next few days he does sign off on this $14 billion package.
Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Horton reporting from Beijing. President Trump also says he's thinking of easing sanctions on Chinese oil companies that make purchases from Iran. At the same time, the president says he does not need China's help to pressure Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The impasse over the waterway has oil on the rise once again. Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson has more from Singapore.
Obviously, Donald Trump would have liked to have had this war resolved before he went to China, but he did talk up what he said were common goals for ending the war. He said, that they agreed that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, the Strait of Hormuz should reopen, and that Beijing is willing to support negotiations.
Bloomberg's Roz Matheson reporting. Now, one piece of the negotiations may be on hold. Iran's foreign minister says the U.S. has agreed to save talks on his country's enriched uranium stockpile until a later date. With the Strait of Hormuz still all but shut down, though, Brent crude is on the rise by nearly 3%, trading close to $109 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate's above $104. That's a gain of more than 3%. That's feeding into inflation concerns that have bond yields on the rise. The 10-year is up more than 9 basis points to 4.57%, the 2 years at 4.07%, and stocks are falling, led by the NASDAQ Composite. That's down 1.1%. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average are both lower by 0.8%, as Jay Powell gets ready to hand the reins over at the Fed to incoming chair Kevin Warsh. Stuart Paul is a U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics.
All of these factors are merging to just continue putting upward pressure on rates. And while that's the case, financial conditions will continue to tighten. And there's a sense in which that does some of the heavy lifting for central banks. And so as Kevin Warsh takes the helm, I certainly don't expect him to deliver swift cuts, but he could be a little bit more patient. There's certainly no reason to hike quickly.
Bloomberg economist Stuart Paul. The first rate decision for Fed Chair-in-waiting Kevin Warsh comes on June 17th. Someone's getting lunch with Warren Buffett and NBA star Steph Curry and his wife Aisha. They're paying $9 million for the privilege. An anonymous bidder paid that seven-figure amount to dine with the 95-year-old investor and 7 of his or her friends and support the charities Glide and Eat, Learn, Play. Buffett routinely hosted a charity lunch auction for more than 2 decades when he was CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. The last one in 2022 raised a record $19 million for charity. Round 2 of the PGA Championship is underway at Aronimink Golf Club, and Alex Smalley is currently alone atop the leaderboard at 4 under par. That's news when you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.